Hello everyone, and welcome to the English Teacher's Guide to the brand new GCSEs. And today we're focusing on section B for paper 1 of the EDEXCEL English Literature paper. And today we're going to look at how to answer this question in order to achieve perfect marks. So here's a reminder of the course. So again, this exam is 50% off the course, with the other 50% being made up of the second exam, paper 2. Two sections. Section A, which is Shakespeare, and again you can view those questions and how to answer them perfectly through my website. And then section B, which we're focusing on today, is the post-1914 literature. Again, please make sure you consult with your teacher regarding which text you're studying, because there is quite a choice out there, so make sure you know what you're doing. We're going to focus on inspector calls. So two questions for you. One, what does the mark scheme say you need to do to include to achieve 40 out of 40 perfect marks? And secondly, what method should you use in order to achieve perfect marks? So pause this, note down your answer, and then press play to resume when you're ready. So I've already gone through the mark scheme in my previous video, how to plan the response, so there's no need for me to go through this now, but there it is, just in case. And then we looked at our planning method. What we need to now look at is our answering method. So 40 to 45 minutes, the only way you're going to get that down to that time is by practicing. Again, you have an introduction where you need to list the points you're going to use, but then ensure you evaluate. Why is the writer overall presenting the character in this way? Now, you can either include an introduction or you can do a conclusion, but I just feel that with time running out for this exam paper, what you want to be doing is putting the introduction in rather than the conclusion. Because if you run out of time, you're not evaluating, so you're not hitting that high level skill. Then, as we've said already, your main paragraphs are going to be 3 to 4 PE paragraphs, which do include the following things you can see in front of you. Remember to use terminology. Remember, you don't necessarily need to include the analytical aspects of explanation, but, as I mentioned in the previous video, it will help to show that you're a mature, cogent understanding of the text, and you're perceptive because you can pick on individual words and phrases. There's no conclusion if you've already written an introduction, and obviously proofread your work carefully. So, here's the question we were working on in our previous video, how to plan. The plan is on that video, so do make sure you see it, because if there's no plan, there's no essay. So it's really important you look at that one. Let's look at what the answer should sound like. So, Priestley presented the character Mr. Belling as a cruel, selfish capitalist, as he wants the audience to understand that social class does not make for better human beings. Listing my points in the order I'm going to use them, I start to evaluate already. Belling's part in the play also helps to push Priestley's socialist message, as he presents his capitalist character in a high negative way to make us dislike this selfish system. Nice and simple, far better than in this essay I'm going to talk about the character Mr. Belling. As mentioned above, Belling is presented as a capitalist. Clear point, nice and obvious for the marker. This is immediately made clear when Belling describes Gerald as the kind of son-in-law I always wanted, due to the fact that he wishes to look forward to a time of lower costs and higher prices. Notice I've not quoted the whole thing. I've only used what I needed to. I've integrated it into my work. I'm writing less, getting higher marks, saving myself time. It's a lazy boy's dream. This obviously highlights that the figure is capitalist, as he only cares about making money for himself rather than helping the millions who, at the time the play is set, 1912, are unemployed or struggling to survive on their wages. Notice I'm integrating context rather than just slamming in context that doesn't really work. Additionally, using the phrase I always wanted to now honing in on certain bits creates the impression that Gerald is seen as a commodity which can be used to make himself even wealthier. Moreover, Belling's actually referring to the man who is about to marry his daughter, so this is the context within the play. Yet the character fails to mention this until the very end of the line, highlighting to the audience his greed. This greed is also highlighted in the multiple use of the personal pronoun I, which helps to show the character is a symbol of all greedy capitalists. This is even more powerful when we keep in mind that the play was first performed in socialist Russia, who would believe all capitalists to be seen in this truly negative light. This negative perception of the capitalist Belling is also presented when the character states, and now I'm introducing my second quote, a man has to make his own way, has to look after himself and his family too, of course, when he has one. Not only does the character once again repeat the use of the singular noun, but the idea of family comes second to the individual, highlighting the mentality of the character. However, many of the audience will agree, so this is an alternative interpretation, with the notion that we must work hard and care for our family, although Priestley uses this idea to enable the audience to see themselves within the character Belling, which then enables Priestley to effectively destroy this capitalist mindset. So, you can see structural analysis, individual word analysis, integrating my context, alternative interpretations which I then use to evaluate, perfect mark paragraph. We've got to do it twice more now. Another way the character Berling is presented is as selfish. It's the same structure once again. And you can see the better the plan, the easier it is to write the essay. This is highlighted when the character states, by the way, some of these cranks talking right now, you'd think everybody has to look after everybody else as if we were all mixed up together like bees in a hive, community and all that nonsense. This highlights the selfish notion of the character because it highlights that not only does he not want to help anyone, but that anyone who does, a socialist, is therefore a crank, suggesting they are strange or even mentally ill for thinking in this way. What makes this selfish attitude even more potentially shocking is that the play was first performed in 1946, a year after the Second World War, a time when Europe was in ruins and people all over the country needed help to rebuild their lives. Therefore, this selfish attitude will ensure the audience dislike the character and will therefore be far more likely to agree with Priestley's views. Moreover, the character's use of mixed up and bees suggests that socialism is not only unorganised and therefore inferior, but suggests that those who help others are nothing more than insects who have no control over their own lives. Furthermore, when being interviewed for the death of Eva Smith's, the second quote, a terrible event which we later discover meant the death of his own grandchild, Berling responds somewhat impatiently, look, there's nothing mysterious or scandalous about this business, at least as far as I'm concerned. It's a perfectly straightforward case, and as it happened more than 18 months ago, nearly 2 years ago, obviously there's nothing whatsoever to do with this wretched girl's suicide. Once again, being impatient suggests not only that he doesn't care about the death of the character, but that any matter concerning something that doesn't directly benefit him makes the character angry. Using the rather generic noun girl also highlights a level of selfishness as the character had worked with Berling, but clearly Berling is once again not interested in her. And our final paragraph. Finally, the character presented to the audience as cruel. Priestley presents this idea when the character states, rubbish, if you don't come down sharply on some of these people, they'd soon be asking for the earth. In response to the notion of workers wanting higher wages. Not only is this cruel because it reminds the audience of the national strikes in response to lower wages that led to the death of protesters at the hands of our own army, but the word sharp suggests that he is quite happy to inflict pain and even employ violence in order to maintain control and lower prices. Notice I've integrated the context within my analysis there, rather than just throwing in additionally. It is also rather an ironic statement, as these capitalist wage would suggest that he wants the earth. Once again, the character refers to the working class as these people, highlighting a disconnection with the poorer members of society who require support. This cruelty also extends to his own family, where in Act 3, second quote coming up, he tells his own son, nothing matters to you, but it may interest you to know that until every penny of that money you stole is repaid, you'll work for nothing. This cruelty once again has materialism in its heart, as rather than being concerned with not only the alcoholism of his son and the loss of a potential grandchild, as mentioned earlier, he is only concerned with getting his money back. Additionally, the fact he considers Eric's use of the money as theft demonstrates he has no care at all for his family, which will force the audience to side against Berling and therefore capitalism. As some may believe, he has stolen any future the character Eva Smith, who represents the working class, may have had away from her. Thank you very much, guys. So that's a perfect mark essay. That's what it looks like. You now need to practice that on your own. Thank you very much. Well done. Keep revising.